Albert died in a car accident while vacationing on an island with his secretary. When the police called me to the scene, I found his secretary, Rose, kneeling beside his lifeless body, crying out his name in anguish. But what caught my attention was Albert's soul, hovering in midair. Perhaps those who betray true love are forsaken even by the Lord of the Underworld. Chapter 1. The police officer standing nearby cleared his throat awkwardly, breaking the silence. Miss Lynn. That single address startled Rose, snapping her out of her tearful display. She turned her red, tear-streaked face toward me in surprise, her expression quickly twisting with something darker. Was Albert truly so devoted to Rose that even in death, all she suffered were some minor scrapes and bruises? But Albert's love. I glanced at the translucent figure of the man watching everything unfold and clicked my tongue in disdain. Albert's love was as fickle as a chameleon's skin. When Rose turned fully to face me, her face flushed, and without a word, she lunged toward me. Albert's spirit, even in his incorporeal form, instinctively moved to shield her, as though afraid I might harm her. Of course, being a mere soul, he could do nothing but watch as Rose passed right through him and stumbled in front of me. Rose, be careful, he frowned, scolding her gently, before glaring at me with all the ferocity of a living man. Gloria, I'm warning you, don't you dare hurt Rose. Just like so many times before. Unfortunately for him, it seemed I was the only one who could hear his voice. Rose reached for my shoulders, her expression twisted in fury. Her intentions were obvious. Frowning, I stepped back to avoid her. It was the police officer who caught her, preventing her from falling face first onto the ground. Miss Yi, please calm yourself, he said firmly. As Mr. An's wife, Miss Lin is the one who should handle the arrangements for his passing. Clearly, the officer had picked up on the nature of Albert and Rose's relationship. As he emphasized the word wife with deliberate precision, Rose froze, her expression darkening into something grotesque. She looked like a wraith, ugly and repulsive, the kind Joaquin feared most. I want to report her, Rose screamed. There's no way Anne's accident was an accident. She did it. She planned it. The officer sighed heavily, as though resigned to her outburst. Watching her unravel, I instinctively took a step behind him. No need to let a madwoman like her lay a finger on me. By now, Albert had moved to stand beside Rose, his gaze icy as he stared at me. I couldn't decipher his expression, but I could guess. He suspected me too. Chapter 2. The police officer looked exasperated. As he opened his mouth to speak, I cut him off and glanced at Rose. If you have no evidence, your accusations are baseless slander. I could sue you for that. Rose gritted her teeth, unable to contain her rage. I found it all rather dull, so I kindly reminded her. I suggest you go back and start sorting out the things Albert left you. I paused deliberately. After all, those were marital assets shared between Albert and me. As his wife, I, along with Joaquin, am the sole heir to Albert's estate. Why don't you guess? Miss Yi, if I might demand the money he spent on you back. Rose's incessant sobbing halted abruptly, seizing the moment of silence. The police gestured for the female officer nearby to escort Rose out of the room. As Rose left, Albert's soul tried to follow her, but the moment he reached the doorway, an invisible force yanked him back into the room. I laughed, mean-spiritedly. Serves you right, Miss Lin. We'll leave the arrangements for Mr. An's funeral in your capable hands, said the officer who had brought me here. I assumed they had already conducted a thorough investigation before contacting me. Albert's car accident had indeed been ruled an accident. During the drive over, the officers had asked me only a few basic questions about Albert, and nothing more. I had no desire to look at his mangled face, not in life, and certainly not in death. Bloodied and disfigured, it was the stuff of nightmares. After calling my assistant and lawyer to handle the arrangements, I was ready to leave. Given the rush to get here, I had asked the nanny to pick up Joaquin from kindergarten, but I still felt uneasy. Without a father figure in his life, Joaquin was particularly attached to me. If I wasn't there, he might refuse to go to bed. Once the paperwork was settled and the police confirmed my assistant would handle things, I headed straight to the airport to catch the earliest flight home. Chapter 3. I confirmed it, Albert couldn't leave me. Seeing his ghost hovering above the plane, I squinted at him, unable to hide my amusement. If that's the case, this could get interesting. No sooner had I disembarked than I received a video message from the nanny. In the video, Joaquin was wearing his adorable pajamas, his large, dark eyes blinking as he refused to go to sleep. It wasn't until the nanny told him that Mommy was watching behind the camera that he reluctantly sat up and smiled at the lens. Mommy, Joaquin wants to sleep with you. Can you come home, please? Joaquin was 5 this year and would start elementary school next year, yet his voice was still so soft and sweet. It tugged at my heartstrings, quickening my pace. I headed home. My assistant had arranged for a car, and I was back within an hour. The nanny was reading a picture book to Joaquin when I walked in. Hearing the sound of the door, Joaquin immediately ran to greet me. I hugged him, reassuring him as I carried him to his room. Once there, I read to him until he finally fell asleep. As I tucked him in, I glanced at the window. Albert's ghost was sitting on the cushioned window seat. In life, perhaps because he didn't like me, Albert had shown little affection for Joaquin. He rarely spent time at home, let alone with his son. In the time I spent putting Joaquin to bed, he hadn't mentioned his father even once. From the corner of the room, I heard Albert mumble, "Why doesn't Joaquin ever ask for me?" I almost laughed out loud, looking at Joaquin's peaceful, sleeping face. I kissed his forehead and went back to the master bedroom. Chapter 4. I wasn't planning to drag this out. Sitting at the edge of my bed, I started. Joaquin is 5 years old. How many times have you spent time with him in those 5 years? Did you ever take him to an amusement park? Did you ever tuck him in at night? And you expect him to care about you? Joaquin knows the family driver better than he knows you. I fixed my gaze on him. We had been married for 10 years. He had been cheating with his secretary for 3. The translucent ghost locked eyes with me. Stunned, the room fell into a heavy silence. His face was full of disbelief, so unlike the composed Mister I had known. "You can see me," he murmured. I didn't bother answering, just stared at him like he was an idiot. Albert sighed and moved to sit at my vanity, confirming he couldn't see his reflection. He froze for a few seconds. I let out a scoff, crossing my arms over my chest. "So, Mr. N, even in death, you can't leave me?" After discovering his affair with Rose, I had filed for divorce, but he refused, claiming he couldn't live without me or Joaquin. He used every excuse to have my petitions thrown out. At my most desperate, I had taken the matter to court, but without concrete evidence of his affair with Rose. I had no case, as she was his secretary. Their frequent comings and goings couldn't be disputed. After several failed attempts, I gave up. From another perspective, having a silent ATM wasn't all bad. He stayed out of the house, didn't stir up trouble, and kept the money flowing. So I began buying real estate under Joaquin's name and focusing on my own career. I always anticipated Albert might suddenly agree to a divorce, but I never expected that instead of divorce papers, I'd receive news of his death. With no siblings and both parents deceased, all of Albert's assets now belong to me and Joaquin, his legally recognized wife and biological son. Albert truly was a generous man. Chapter 5. We barely spoke the entire night. I went to sleep quickly. Early the next morning, my assistant sent me Albert's cremation certificate, along with a video of his body being placed into the crematorium. Albert, floating nearby, had no idea what I was watching. He drifted closer and caught sight of the video on my phone. "You're not even a little sad?" he asked, his voice heavy with resentment. I sipped my coffee, enjoying it thoroughly. As his frown deepened, ignoring his question, I finished the last sip of my coffee and went to Joaquin's room to wake him up for kindergarten. Albert, frustrated by my silence, began hovering around me, raising his voice angrily. "Gloria!" Joaquin, freshly awake and completely oblivious to the commotion, smiled up at me with his sleepy eyes. "Mommy, today I want to bring lots of snacks to share with my friends." While brushing his teeth, Joaquin couldn't help but bounce excitedly. I couldn't stop smiling as I helped him pack the snacks he wanted to take, tucking them neatly into his bag. Chapter 6. After dropping off Joaquin and confirming some details online with my lawyer, I headed to Albert's company. Albert didn't seem to react much, probably because he was sulking, or maybe he was looking forward to seeing Rose. Either way, He was bound to be disappointed. Men often have a blind spot when it comes to seeing people clearly. Rose wasn't at the office when we arrived. Albert's other secretary, Mr. Wu, was already aware of his passing and had received a call from my lawyer. He understood why I was here and had thoughtfully arranged a meeting for 2 p.m. Mr. Wu escorted me to Albert's office. Ms. Lin, please have a seat here while I fetch the documents, he said, then hesitated. After a moment's pause, he opened a cabinet door, revealing a hidden bedroom inside. If you're feeling tired, you can rest here, he suggested. The small room had a large bed, a basic wardrobe, and even a bathtub. I frowned. The thought of what Albert and Rose might have done in that room killed any desire I had to stay. Or worse, what might have happened in this office itself. The more I thought about it, the more repulsed I became. This place is filthy, I muttered, stepping back and rubbing my nose. I'd rather stay in your office. Mr. Wu. Albert, who had been unusually quiet, couldn't help but glare at me, ignoring his anger. I gestured for Mr. Wu to lead the way. Seeing no other choice, Mr. Wu quickly led me to his office. Chapter 7. After reviewing some documents and consulting with a specialist remotely, it was already midday. Albert had finally pieced together what I was planning. As I headed to the cafeteria for lunch with Mr. Wu, Albert followed closely behind, shouting insults at me. It was ironic. Really, we met when I was 17, fell in love at 18, got married at 23, and now, for the first time, I was witnessing the almighty Mr. and throwing a tantrum. Gloria, how dare you sell my shares? You be asterisk 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 asterisk. This is all mine. What right do you have? Albert had come from a modest background. Everything the company had achieved was a testament to his hard work and ambition. He was a rising star among his peers, even proposing to me at 20, though we didn't marry until 3 years later because he wanted to provide me with a better life. And yet, in the 7th year of our marriage, he cheated. While Mr. Wu went to get our food, I finally replied, "They're mine now." I didn't bother elaborating. Albert froze, his eyes turning red with anger. Gloria, you'll die a miserable death. After lunch, I rested briefly before heading to the afternoon meeting. I hadn't even reached the conference room when I heard a familiar voice inside. It was Rose. I leaned against the doorframe and glanced at Albert, seeing the flicker of anticipation in his eyes. I couldn't help but laugh. What a foolish man. Dear shareholders, Rose's voice echoed faintly through the door. Albert desperately tried to push past me, glaring at me repeatedly, but I didn't move. If I didn't go in, neither could he. He had no choice but to stay and listen with me. Mr. N has passed away. Rose's voice faltered, worried she might ruin my plans. I decided to stop antagonizing Albert for the moment. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Miss Yi, what a coincidence, I said with a faint smile. Chapter 8. Hearing my voice, Rose, dressed in a white chiffon dress, visibly flinched. Good day, everyone. I greeted the gathered shareholders, ignoring her completely. Rose stood frozen in front of the seat I intended to occupy. I set my bag on the table and raised an eyebrow at her. Miss Yi, is there something you still need? Rose was far from clever, and she had no poker face. One look into her eyes, and I could tell exactly what she was plotting, just like 3 years ago when she first went to a hotel with Albert and looked at me afterward with a mix of smugness and provocation. This time, it was no different. It only took a glance to see her intention. She wanted to collude with these shareholders to trade Albert's shares for her personal gain. Albert was a fool. He ignored the schemes in Rose's eyes. Yet he immediately noticed the timid gaze she cast toward Mr. Jean, one of the older shareholders. That single glance was enough to make Albert's soul ache for her. He darted to my side, glaring at me with murderous intent. Gloria, if you dare harm Rose, I swear I'll drag you to hell with me. Hell? I ignored him, shifting my gaze to the slightly balding Mr. Jean. Rose's taste, it seemed, left much to be desired, but I understood her situation well. Every shareholder here knew about her affair with Albert. Rose was now a glaring liability, a hot potato no one with any sense wanted to handle. In that light, Mr. Jean, balding yet wealthy and lecherous, wasn't a bad choice for her. I pushed past Rose, dragging the chair out and seating myself. I'm here today to discuss the company's future with all of you. I began, turning to Mr. Wu. Mr. Wu, please explain Albert's situation to the shareholders. Mr. Wu's expression tightened, but he complied, summarizing Albert's death once more. When he mentioned the car accident, many of the shareholders cast skeptical glances at Rose. During the company's early days, Albert couldn't afford a driver. It was hard to believe Rose had no part in the accident. But with only the two of them in the car and Rose insisting it was an accident, the police had nothing to say. Even Mr. Jin's gaze, once sympathetic toward Rose, turned cold. Rose bit her lip, her eyes red and trembling with tears. She looked pitiful. I tapped the table, dropping a bombshell. I'm not familiar with the intricacies of Albert's company. After consulting with professionals, I've decided to sell his shares. I value the contributions each of you have made to Albert's company, so I'll prioritize selling the shares to the shareholders. I pulled a stack of my assistant's business cards from my bag, handed them to Rose, and smirked. Miss Yi, could you distribute these to the shareholders? At first, Rose had been cautious around me, worried Albert might still side with me, but after realizing our marriage was only nominal, she had flaunted every gift Albert gave her. Now, suddenly being ordered around, her brain seemed to short-circuit. 2 streams of tears rolled down her cheeks, a crying beauty. Albert was seething but powerless to intervene. Mr. Jean, however, stepped forward on Rose's behalf, smiling placatingly. Ms. Lin, please, show her some leniency. Don't make things difficult for Rose. He motioned for his assistant to take the cards from Rose and distribute them. I raised an indifferent eyebrow. Once each shareholder had a card, I explained. You have 3 days to consider. After that, I'll contact buyers and sell the 55% stake. I stood to leave, pausing at the door to glance back at Rose. Don't forget what I told you at the police station. Miss Yi, I'll come for what's owed. Better get it sorted soon. With that, I strode out, heels clicking against the floor. Chapter 9. An invisible force pulled Albert along, forcing him to follow me out of the building step by step. In the car, he sat beside me, his expression resigned. Seeing my determination to sell the shares and make life difficult for Rose, he finally gave up struggling and softened his tone. Glow, I know I've wronged you, but I thought I treated you decently overall. Please, I'm begging you, sell the shares to Kevin and leave Rose out of this. Kevin was Albert's original business partner and the witness at our wedding. I hadn't seen Kevin earlier, only his assistant, who had attended in his place. I glanced down at my phone, watching a video sent by Joaquin's kindergarten teacher. In the video, Joaquin pulled snacks from his bag, handing them out one by one to his friends. The children clapped and sang, forming a circle around him. Joaquin stood in the center, grinning so broadly his eyes were mere slits. He looked utterly delighted. Albert leaned over, catching sight of the video. The words he wanted to say caught in his throat. He didn't say anything more, instead staring at Joaquin's joyful face on the screen. When the driver stopped in front of the villa, I spotted my assistant hurrying back. Since the island trip, he'd been swamped with work and looked exhausted, feeling a pang of guilt as I remembered the stack of business cards I'd just handed out. I said, "Your year-end bonus will double this year." Patting his shoulder, I headed inside, hearing the promise of a double bonus. His tired face brightened noticeably. He followed me in, pulling out the paper cremation certificate and death certificate. I've already submitted these to the lawyer. They're processing the transfer of ownership for you and the young master. Taking the documents, I tossed them onto the single-seater sofa where Albert's ghost sat. Thank you for your hard work, I said, recounting the day's events. Just as I finished, his phone rang. He glanced at me for permission before answering on speaker. On the other end, a male voice rasped urgently. Tell Ms. Lin I want the shares she's holding. The man's voice carried a hint of age. It was Mr. Jean. I picked up a glass of water and brought it to my lips. At this hour, with that tone, TSK. Rose really isn't picky. Chapter 10. I didn't agree to anything immediately. Instead, I asked the driver to tidy up the car before heading to pick up Joaquin. Outside the kindergarten, several parents were already waiting, their luxury cars parked along the curb. Joaquin attended a private kindergarten with high standards, and the social circles it involved rarely included unsavory characters. I greeted a few familiar parents I had met during previous pickups. One of Joaquin's classmates' mothers, Mrs. David, smiled warmly and approached me. I noticed my David really enjoyed one of the snacks Joaquin brought to school today. Would you mind sharing the link with me? Her tone was soft and sweet. I quickly sent her the link via her phone. Mrs. David promptly called Mr. David to share the information. Taking the hint, I stepped aside, watching the children interact with their teacher inside. Joaquin spotted me and waved enthusiastically, blowing me a kiss with a big smile on his face. Joaquin was always such a well-behaved child. Noticing his distraction, the teacher smiled at me and gently guided Joaquin back to the group. Albert, unusually quiet, drifted closer, glancing at the parents around us. He hesitated before asking, "Was it always just you picking him up?" Annoyed, I shot him a sidelong glance. "Isn't Joaquin's father dead?" Albert froze, his expression darkening further, already simmering with anger over my plans from the afternoon. My remark seemed to push him over the edge. His face was now darker than seaweed. His misery only brightened my mood. Having been in a relationship with Albert for years and married for even longer, I knew exactly how to strike where it hurt. Back then, I held back, needing him as my personal ATM. Now, with no such concerns, I didn't see the need for restraint. When school let out, Joaquin ran into my arms, holding my hand tightly as he waved goodbye to his teacher. In the car, his little hands danced in the air as he excitedly shared stories about his day. Suddenly, Joaquin's eyes widened as he asked, "Mommy, today Jojo said everyone has both a mommy and a daddy, but I only have mommy. Why is that?" There was no trace of sadness or confusion in his tone, just pure curiosity. I let out a small sigh of relief. Since Joaquin's birth, I had prepared myself for this moment. Although Albert occasionally visited Joaquin, I rarely let them interact. Even when he came, I timed his visits for after Joaquin was asleep. After Albert's parents passed and he got busier with Rose, his visits became even less frequent. Joaquin genuinely had no real impression of his father. Albert hovered nearby, watching intently, as if eager to hear how I would respond. Ignoring him, I hesitated briefly before deciding to tell Joaquin the truth. Joaquin was different from other children, more mature, well-behaved, and understanding. I wanted our relationship to be a mix of mother and friend. I calmly narrated the story of Albert and me, our long entanglement over the years. When I spoke of discovering Albert's affair, my voice faltered, and my eyes grew moist. The memories were still raw, despite my best efforts to remain composed. Through the blur of tears, I saw Albert instinctively reach out to wipe them away. How laughable. I lifted Joaquin from his seat and held him tightly. "But Mommy has you, Joaquin, with you. Mommy isn't afraid of anything." Joaquin hugged my neck and cried for a long time. When we finally pulled into the driveway, he let go, blinking his bright black eyes rapidly to keep his tears from falling. "Mommy, having me as the man of the house is enough. I'll protect you." His tiny, earnest face melted my heart. I couldn't help but laugh, hugging him tightly. "Okay, Joaquin, you'll protect Mommy from now on." Chapter 11. After Joaquin went inside with the nanny, I stayed in the car, staring blankly at the passenger seat. Albert had listened to the entire story I told Joaquin, for perhaps the first time. He seemed to realize how cruel his actions had been when viewed from another angle. He remained silent. Albert's voice broke the silence, intrusive and irritating. I stayed in the car to collect my thoughts, not to hear his apologies or complaints. Pushing the door open, I stepped out, heels clicking against the pavement as I walked away. Albert didn't follow voluntarily. The invisible force tethering him to me yanked him along as I moved. And just like that, the third day arrived. After dropping Joaquin off at kindergarten, I returned to Albert's company. Mr. Wu greeted me and escorted me straight to the conference room. During the drive, I had already discussed the situation with my assistant. Albert's company was doing well, but of all the offers I had received over the past 3 days, Mr. Jin's terms were the most favorable. After our last call, Mr. Jin even sweetened the deal further. Albert knew my intentions but didn't rage this time. As we approached the conference room, He merely pleaded softly, "Please, don't be so cruel to Rose." It seemed he truly had feelings for her. Thinking about the message my assistant had just sent, I said nothing in reply, pushing the door open with interest. I wondered, once Albert saw what was happening inside the conference room, if he'd still feel so soft-hearted toward Rose. Chapter 12. The conference room door swung open, and the first thing I saw was Rose seated beside Mr. Jean. Gone was the sweet and demure facade she put on in front of Albert. Today, she wore a tight white blouse, the faint outlines of her curves barely concealed. Her black pencil skirt was scandalously short, leaving little to the imagination. Jin's hand rested lightly on her pale thigh. How amusing. It seemed my suspicions were correct. The two of them must have started their affair right after the last meeting. The breathlessness in Jin's voice during his first phone call now made sense. It came from conquering his newfound fairy. Rose lifted her chin when she saw me in my casual chiffon dress, her expression blatantly triumphant. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Albert rushing to Rose's side, his soul practically shaking with anger. By now, I had grown used to Albert's outbursts. His emotional shifts no longer surprised me. I pulled out a chair, sat down, and scanned the room. These past few days, we've received many calls. After careful consideration, I've decided to sell the shares to Mr. Jean. I handed the contract, prepared by my lawyer, to Mr. Jean. Let's make this a pleasant collaboration. Jean removed his hand from Rose's thigh, flipping through the contract carefully. After confirming the terms, he signed with a flourish. A pleasure doing business. M.S. Lin. Albert had already collapsed onto the floor, drained and defeated. Amid the noise of the room, I could faintly hear his murmurs. What have I done, all for a woman like this? But that was no longer my concern. Chapter 13. Having achieved her goal, Rose ignored decorum and wrapped her arms around Jin's neck, planting a kiss on him. Jean, delighted by her affections, waved at me smugly. M.S. Lin. Why not let Rose off the hook? The shareholders who hadn't secured the shares perked up, curious about how this scene would unfold. I had no problem giving Jean a small gesture of goodwill. Tilting my head, I replied lightly, "But Mr. Jean, you must know that Miss Yi spent quite a lot of my husband's money. I wouldn't stir trouble unnecessarily, but what belonged to Joaquin and me was non-negotiable." Rose, playing the victim, pouted at Jean. Mr. Jean, her voice dripped with honey, cloyingly sweet, eager to please his beauty. Jean motioned to his assistant, who handed me a card. I estimated the costs of everything Rose took. This card should cover it. Jean winked at me in an oily manner. If M.S. Lin needs anything in the future, don't hesitate to contact me. I couldn't be bothered to respond. This would be the last intersection of our lives. Taking the card, I replied coolly. Then congratulations, Mr. Jean, on acquiring both the shares and the beauty. Chapter 14. As I left the building, I glanced back at the towering skyscraper, bustling with people coming and going. For a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia. It was as if I were back in college, when Albert, still young and full of ambition, held the equally youthful Gloria in his arms, promising to cherish her forever. But in the end, everything had changed. My assistant's cautious figure trailing behind broke me out of my reverie. I chuckled. Once this is all wrapped up, I'll give you a few days off. He looked at me in surprise before hesitating. And the year-end bonus? Was I the kind of boss who exploited her employees? I tapped his head lightly with my bag. Keep asking about the bonus, and it won't double. He quickly surrendered with a laugh. Chapter 15. The next time I heard about Rose, it was from a friend. Mr. Jean, despite his wealth, was not one to keep useless ornaments around. His interest in Rose was purely physical. With Albert out of the picture, Rose had finally gotten her fill. But overindulgence had its price. Jean quickly grew bored. From wealth to poverty was an easy transition. The reverse, impossible. When Jean moved on, Rose didn't lack replacements, first Mr. Li, then Mr. Wang. Soon, she became infamous in social circles as a high-end escort. In the end, she contracted a disease and died alone in a cold alley one winter, reportedly after being assaulted by a group of thugs. As if on cue, Albert's soul finally departed that same day. After seeing Rose's true colors, He had grown eerily quiet. I often forgot he was still lingering around me. But luckily, I didn't care about him. My days had been peaceful and free of complications. After all, happiness is what matters most in life. Extra Chapter 1. Years passed in the blink of an eye. Now a grown and incredibly handsome young man, Joaquin became an internet sensation after a photo of him during his college military training went viral. Fueled by his passion for acting, Joaquin eventually decided to enter the entertainment industry. Stubborn as he was, Joaquin refused my offers to use my connections to secure better scripts. Instead, he started from small roles, playing everything from a monk with only one scene to a male lead with a significant arc. He was dedicated, focused on honing his craft, and, most importantly, genuinely happy. The only downside? Joaquin visited home far less often. One late summer evening, Joaquin returned from a film set and asked if I would join him on a variety show. It's a family-centered, slow-paced reality show. He explained, it's all about spending time together. I haven't traveled with you in ages, so I thought this would be the perfect chance. Out in the world, Joaquin was a rising star adored by countless fans. At home, though, he was still the same sweet and thoughtful son, occasionally throwing in a bit of playful begging. Worried I might refuse, he clung to my arm and swayed like a child. Mommy, how could I say no to that? 3 days later, the production crew arrived at our villa to shoot the pilot episode. Ms. Lin, we're here to record the introduction segment, the assistant director said nervously. Adjusting his glasses, Joaquin had already prepped me, so I sat next to him in front of the camera. The staff asked many questions about his childhood, and I answered them all. Joaquin lightened the mood with playful complaints, and the shoot went smoothly. The first stop of the show was an island. Since it was a slow-paced reality show, there weren't many cameramen following us, allowing us to truly enjoy the trip. The days flew by, and soon we reached the final destination, the picturesque Yunnan province. While Joaquin was off on a task assigned by the director, I visited a peacock sanctuary. The lush greenery and serene atmosphere were mesmerizing, and the peacocks quickly gathered around me, attracted by the food in my hands. When Joaquin returned, we headed to Arai Lake to enjoy a barbecue under the starlit sky. Perhaps it was the alcohol, but Joaquin's cheeks flushed, and his eyes glistened with unshed tears. Mom, I've wanted to take you on a trip like this for so long, he said, his voice trembling. By the time he finished, his words were tinged with a sob. I pulled him into a hug, comforting him the way I did when he was a child. Joaquin, you've grown into someone amazing. Throughout his life, Joaquin had been a source of pride and joy for me, thoughtful and mature beyond his years. He never made reckless decisions. Even when uncertain, he would turn to me for advice. His decision to enter the entertainment industry wasn't impulsive. It was a choice he had carefully considered, and he succeeded, becoming a dazzling star in his own right. Having a child like Joaquin, I couldn't be prouder or happier. As the show wrapped up, Joaquin returned to filming. However, he adjusted his pace, taking 2 months off after each project to spend time with me. By then, I had already handed my company over to professional managers. My days were filled with shopping, traveling, and occasionally playing mahjong with friends. No man, no problem. Life was still wonderful. Extra Chapter 2. After leaving Gloria's side, I didn't descend into the depths of hell as I had expected. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in high school, the day I first met Gloria. She walked a short distance ahead of me, her high ponytail swaying with each step, her uniform crisp and neat. She laughed freely with her friends, carefree and radiant. In my previous life, I had deliberately thrown a ball near her to strike up a conversation. She was amazing. I gripped the ball tightly, my palms sweating. This time, I didn't dare approach her. For the next 2 years, I watched Gloria from afar, without me holding her back. She flourished, free from catering to my fragile ego. She thrived and was admitted to the country's top university even before the national entrance exams. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. How much had she compromised for me in the past? No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't catch up to her. Eventually, I was accepted into a university near hers, but it was a far cry from her prestigious institution. Our paths diverged further in college, Gloria, unsurprisingly, became the campus beauty. Even I knew of at least 7 or 8 admirers vying for her attention, all far better than I had ever been. Meanwhile, I was nothing but a failure, trapped in a pit I couldn't escape. I met Rose again 6 years after starting work, failing to graduate on time due to my lack of effort. I had missed the prime job hunting window, struggling to make ends meet. I ended up delivering food on an old scooter. One day, a delivery took me to a luxury apartment complex. The sight of my worn scooter amidst the sleek cars was jarring. When I called the customer, a familiar voice answered, "Coming right down." It was Rose. She appeared moments later in a silky, seductive nightgown, taking the milk tea from my hands. But Rose came from a poor family. She couldn't possibly afford a place like this. Memories of her intimate moments with Jean from my previous life flooded back. She had always been this way. I had been blind. "What are you staring at, you lousy delivery boy?" Rose snapped, covering her chest with her hand. I realized I hadn't looked away. She stormed off, muttering, "I'm leaving you a bad review." Slumping to the ground, my mind raced through memories of Gloria. I had once had the best. How had I allowed someone like Rose to cloud my judgment? My phone buzzed. A notification, a 1-star review from Rose. I opened Gloria's social media profile. No longer tethered by my career or my selfish needs, she had pursued her dreams. In her latest post, Gloria stood confidently at a podium, her serene smile radiating elegance.